Hi everyone, welcome to another tutorial on CSS. In this tutorial, we'll be learning the CSS properties, why, what and how are they used. If you want to know what is CSS and have an introduction to cascading style sheets, the video link is in the description and provided in the info box here. You can also learn HTML with us on our YouTube channel. Now let's get started with CSS properties. So what are CSS properties? CSS properties are a set of rules that define how HTML elements are displayed on a web page. CSS properties control the appearance of an HTML element, such as color, size, font, layout, and position among others. Each CSS property has a specific name and value. For example, the color property sets the color of the text, and the font size property sets the size of the text. CSS properties can be applied to individual HTML elements or to a group of elements through the use of CSS selectors. You can learn different selectors with us by clicking the link in the info box here. Also attach the same in the description section. There are many CSS properties available, each with its own specific use and effect on the appearance of a web page. Here is an introduction to some of the most commonly used CSS properties. First is font styling. Let us see how we use it and what is its purpose. As you can see, I had created an HTML file and have written some code inside it. You can find all the code in our Git repository, the link is in the description. Font styling in CSS refers to various ways in which text can be styled on a web page, including font family, size, weight, style and color. As you can see the code here, the font family property is used to set the font of an element. It can be set to specific font name or list of font names. If the first font is not available on user's computer, the next font in the list will be used instead. The font size property sets the font size of the text. It can be set in pixels, EMs or other units. The font weight property sets the boldness of the text. It can be set in normal, bold or number between 100 and 900. The text align property sets the alignment of the text. It can be set to start, center and end or none. The line height, letter spacing, word spacing, white space properties sets the spacing of the words and letters. The text transform property sets the case of the text. It can be set to uppercase, lowercase or capitalize. The text shadow property adds the shadow to the text. It can be set to color, horizontal offset, vertical offset or blurred offset. The text decoration property sets the decoration of the text, like underline. It can be set to underline, overline, line through or none. Let us see how it appears on the web browser. Perfect, it is showing the way we styled it. Now let us learn what are margin and padding. Margin and padding are two important concepts in web design and development. Margin refers to space outside an element, between the element and its other surrounding elements. It is defined by using CSS property margin. Margin can set for all four sides of element, top, right, bottom and left, or individually using shorthand properties such as margin top, margin right, margin bottom, margin left. Negative margins are also possible, which can be used to move elements closer together. Padding on the other hand refers to space inside an element, between the element's content and its borders. It is defined using CSS property padding. Padding can also be set for all four sides of an element, or individually using shorthand properties such as padding top, padding right, padding bottom and padding left. Let us see how it appears on the browser. As you can see, the main difference between margin and padding is that margin creates space outside the element, while padding creates space inside the element. Both margin and padding can be used to adjust the layout of spacing of elements on a web page, but they are typically used for different purposes. For example, margin is often used to create space between elements, while padding is often used to create space around an element's content. Now let us learn colors in CSS. Colors in CSS are defined using variety of methods, including named colors, RGB values, hexadecimal values, and much more. Here is an overview of some of the most common ways to use or define colors in CSS. Named colors. CSS include a set of predefined color names such as red, green, blue, black, white and so on. These colored names can be used directly in CSS properties such as background color or color. Hexadecimal values are another way to define colors in CSS. They are similar to RGB values but are expressed as 6-digit hexadecimal number. Each pair of digits represents the amount of red, green or blue light to be mixed together. We can also define in RGB values. RGB stands for red, green and blue, which are primary colors of light. RGB values are defined using combination of 3 values between 0 and 255, representing the amount of red, green and blue light to be mixed together. We can also use gradient styling. Linear gradient in CSS allows you to create gradual transition between 2 or more colors, creating a smooth color gradient effect. They are created using linear gradient function, which can be used as the value of any CSS property that accepts a color value. Let us see how it appears on the browser. Perfect. There are also many other color formats and methods for defining colors in CSS, including RGBA values, which include an additional alpha channel for transparency, HSLA values, which include an alpha channel for transparency, and much more. Now let us learn writing some responsive CSS. Media queries in CSS allows you to apply styles based on characteristics of the device or screen where the content is being displayed. This allows you to create responsive designs that adjust the different screen sizes, orientations and other characteristics. Media queries are defined using @media rule in CSS. Here is an example of how to create a media query that targets device with maximum screen width of 414 pixels. In this example, we are using the max width property to set the maximum screen width that the media query applies to. Any style within the curly braces will only applied when the screen width is 414 pixels or less. You can also combine multiple conditions using logical operator, such as using AND or. To create more complex media queries, here is an example. In this example, we are combining the min width condition and max width condition to create a more specific media query that targets devices with a minimum screen width of 415 pixels and maximum screen width of 768 pixels. Media queries can be used for a variety of purposes, such as adjusting font sizes, hiding or showing, displaying elements, repositioning of elements, and much more. They are a powerful tool for creating responsive designs that adapt to characteristics of the device or screen that the content is being displayed on. That is it all for today. These are just a few examples of many CSS properties available to web designers. By using CSS, designers can create visually appealing and functional websites. However, we have some more different types of properties in CSS. You can read through them in our blog post. The link is in the description. If you had followed all our HTML and CSS tutorials till now, which we had learned here on YouTube, then it is more than enough to get started for building a fancy website. Please hit the subscribe button if you loved our CSS tutorial series. Thank you.